A new maid found her mother's photo inside a billionaire's wallet. What she discovered changed everything. Elena Martinez had cleaned hundreds of rooms in her 8 years as a housekeeper, but none quite like this one. The penthouse apartment sprawled across the top floor of Manhattan's most exclusive building, all glass and steel and cold, modern lines that matched its owner perfectly. She'd been working for Mr. Alexander Hunt for exactly 3 weeks, and in that time, she'd learned to move through his space like a ghost.
He preferred it that way.
The employment agency had been explicit. Mr. Hunt valued privacy above all else. No questions, no small talk, no interaction beyond what was absolutely necessary. At 28, Elena needed this job desperately. Her younger brother's medical bills were mounting, and this position paid 3 times what she'd earned at the hotel. So she followed the rules, kept her head down, and tried not to think about how lonely it must be to live in such a beautiful prison. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. Mr. Hunt had left for his office at precisely 6:47 a.m., as he did every weekday. Elena had waited the customary 15 minutes before entering, giving him time to clear the building. She moved through her routine with practiced efficiency. Kitchen first, then the living areas, finally the bedroom and study. The study was her least favorite room. Something about it felt heavy, weighted with secrets. Dark wood panels lined the walls, and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves held leather-bound volumes that looked untouched. The massive desk sat positioned to face the windows, offering a view of Central Park that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. Elena was dusting the desk when she noticed the wallet. It sat partially open, likely dropped in haste that morning. She should have left it alone. Rule number 1: never touch personal items. But as she moved to dust around it, something slipped from between the leather folds and fluttered to the floor. A photograph. She bent to retrieve it, planning to tuck it back quickly. But as her fingers touched the worn edges, her heart stopped. The breath left her lungs in a rush that made her dizzy. The woman in the photo was young, maybe 25, with dark hair that caught the sunlight and eyes that sparkled with laughter. She wore a simple yellow dress and stood in front of a small house with peeling paint, holding a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. Elena knew this photo. She had an identical copy in a shoebox under her bed, one of the only pictures she had from her childhood. The woman was her mother, and the baby was Elena herself. Her hands trembled as she stared at the image, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Why would Alexander Hunt, a billionaire tech mogul who'd never spoken more than 10 words to her, carry a photo of her mother in his wallet? Her mother had died when Elena was 5, a casualty of a hit-and-run driver who'd never been found. The memories were fragments now: warm hands braiding her hair, the smell of vanilla and cinnamon, a soft voice singing Spanish lullabies. She heard the elevator ding in the hallway. Panic flooded through her. He never came home during the day. Never. Elena fumbled with the photo, trying to slide it back into the wallet with shaking fingers. It slipped, falling again. She grabbed it, shoved it into the wallet, and stepped back just as the apartment door opened. Alexander Hunt walked in, and for the first time since she'd started working for him, he looked directly at her. Really looked at her. He froze in the doorway of the study, his ice blue eyes locked on her face. The color drained from his features, and something Elena couldn't identify flickered across his expression. Shock, recognition, maybe even fear. "What are you doing in here?" His voice was rough, lower than usual. I was dusting. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hunt. I'll come back later." "Stop." The single word halted her retreat. He moved into the room, his gaze never leaving her face. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair that was slightly disheveled today, as if he'd been running his hands through it. His suit probably cost more than her car, but he wore it carelessly, the tie loosened, the top button undone. He was handsome in a harsh, angular way, all sharp edges and guarded expressions. In 3 weeks, she'd never seen him smile. "What's your name?" he asked. She blinked. "Elena. Elena Martinez. It's on my employee file." "Martinez." He repeated the name like it tasted bitter. His hand moved to his pocket, to the wallet she'd just disturbed. "How old are you?" 28. Mr. Hunt, I should really. Your mother's name. It wasn't a question, but Elena answered anyway, compelled by something in his voice. Rosa. Rosa Martinez. She died when I was 5. Alexander Hunt closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they held a depth of pain that shocked her. This cold, distant man who treated his home like a hotel suddenly looked devastated. I know, he said quietly. I know she died. I was there. The words hung in the air between them like shattered glass. Elena felt the room tilt, her carefully constructed world sliding sideways. She gripped the edge of the desk, needing something solid to anchor her. What do you mean, you were there? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Alexander Hunt ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so uncharacteristically uncertain that it frightened her more than his usual cold demeanor. He moved to the windows, staring out at the city below as if the answers might be written in the streets. Sit down, he said. Please. Elena didn't want to sit. She wanted to run, to escape this room and this moment and whatever truth was about to shatter her understanding of her own history. But her legs felt weak, so she sank into one of the leather chairs that faced his desk. He turned to face her, and she was struck by how much older he suddenly looked. The mask he wore, the cold, untouchable billionaire, had cracked, revealing someone haunted underneath. I was 9 years old, he began, his voice steady but quiet. My father was driving. He'd been drinking, he always drank after business dinners, but he never let it stop him from getting behind the wheel. My mother had died 2 years before, and he'd become careless, reckless. Elena's chest tightened. She knew where this was going, but she couldn't stop him, couldn't interrupt even as dread built in her stomach. It was raining. We were on Roosevelt Avenue, driving too fast. Your mother. He paused, his jaw clenching. She was crossing the street. She had a bag of groceries. I remember seeing the yellow of her dress in the headlights. My father didn't even try to brake. The room swam before Elena's eyes. 23 years. 23 years she'd wondered about the driver who'd killed her mother and left her alone. 23 years of imagining some nameless stranger, some faceless evil she could hate from a distance. He killed her. The words tasted like acid. Your father killed my mother, and he drove away. Yes. Alexander's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He didn't stop. He just kept driving, and when I screamed at him to go back, he told me to shut up. Told me I'd imagined it. The next day, he had the car detailed and sold it. Within a week, we'd moved from Queens to Manhattan. He made sure there was no trail. You knew. Elena stood, anger flooding through her, hot and sharp. You knew all these years, and you did nothing. You protected him. I was 9 years old. The words burst from him with unexpected force. I was a child, and he was all I had left. He told me it was an accident, that she'd run out in front of us, that reporting it would ruin our lives. And I believed him because I was terrified and alone, and I needed to believe him. He moved toward her, then stopped, as if remembering he had no right to seek comfort or understanding. I went back the next day. Walked all the way from our new apartment in Manhattan back to that street in Queens. There were flowers there, candles. And there was a newspaper article taped to a lamppost with your mother's picture. It said she'd left behind a 5-year-old daughter. Elena's anger warred with something more complicated. Pity for a 9-year-old boy caught in an impossible situation. Fury at the man who'd carried this secret for decades. The article had your mother's picture. Alexander continued. I took it. I've carried it with me every day since. A reminder of what my family destroyed, of the guilt I couldn't escape. Guilt. Elena's laugh was bitter. You felt guilty, so you kept a picture? That was your penance.
No.
He met her eyes, and the raw honesty there made her breath catch. The picture was a promise. That someday I'd make it right. That I'd find you, find out what happened to you after we destroyed your life. So you hired me. Understanding dawned, cold and unwelcome. The agency didn't send me randomly. You sought me out. Yes. He didn't apologize, didn't look away. I've had investigators tracking you for years. When I saw you'd started working as a housekeeper, I arranged for the agency to offer you this position." Elena felt violated, manipulated. Her privacy, her choices, none of it had been real.
Why? What did you want from me?
"To help you." His voice cracked slightly. "To give you opportunities, to make sure you were taken care of. My father died 5 years ago, worth billions, and every cent of that fortune was built on the suffering of others. You deserve some of that wealth. You deserved a life that wasn't shaped by what he took from you. I don't want his money." The words came out fierce. "I don't want anything from you. Your brother needs a kidney transplant." Alexander's words stopped her retreat toward the door. "Carlos, 25, diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease 3 years ago. He's on the transplant list, but his insurance won't cover the anti-rejection medications or the post-operative care he'll need. You're working 3 jobs to try to save enough, but it's not coming fast enough." Tears burned Elena's eyes. "How dare you investigate my family? Because I needed to know how to help. Because every day that I live in luxury while you struggle is another day that the scales stay unbalanced." He took a step toward her, his expression open in a way she'd never seen. "I know you hate me. You have every right to. But please, let me help your brother. Let me do this one thing right." Elena wanted to refuse. Wanted to throw his offer back in his face and walk out with her dignity intact. But she thought of Carlos, growing weaker each month, his smile becoming more strained as his body betrayed him. She thought of their tiny apartment, the medical bills stacked on the kitchen table, the constant calculation of which utilities they could afford to pay. "Why didn't you just send money anonymously?" she asked. "Why bring me here? Why the job? Why all of this?" For the first time, Alexander Hunt looked uncertain. Vulnerable. "Because I'm a coward," he said quietly. "Because I've spent 25 years building walls around myself, not letting anyone in, not trusting anyone because I knew that I was built on a lie. That my entire life was founded on a hidden run that my father covered up. I thought if I could see you, know you were okay, maybe I could finally breathe." He pulled out the wallet, removed the worn photograph, and held it out to her. "She was beautiful," he said. "Your mother." In the second before the impact, I saw her face. She was smiling. "Did you know that?" Even crossing the street in the rain with groceries, she was smiling. I've never been able to forget that smile. Elena took the photo, with trembling hands. Her mother's face, frozen in time, forever young and happy. A wave of grief crashed over her, as fresh as the day she'd learned her mother was gone. "I need time," she whispered. "I need to think." Alexander nodded. "Take all the time you need. Your job is here if you want it. My offer to help Carlos stands, no strings attached. And if you never want to see me again, I'll understand." She left without another word, the photograph clutched in her hand, her world fundamentally altered. Elena didn't go home. She couldn't face Carlos yet, couldn't bear to see his hopeful face when she didn't know what to tell him. Instead, she walked. Through Central Park, down Fifth Avenue, across streets her mother had probably walked decades ago when this city had been full of promise instead of tragedy. She found herself in Queens, in the neighborhood where they'd lived before her mother died. The house was gone now, replaced by a modern apartment building, but the street felt familiar in a way that made her chest ache. How many times had her mother walked this sidewalk, holding Elena's small hand? She sat on a bench near where the old house had stood and pulled out her phone. She had one voicemail from the agency, probably wondering why she hadn't reported back. 3 texts from Carlos asking about dinner. 1 missed call from her friend Maria. And she had a worn photograph of her mother, carried for 25 years by a man who'd witnessed her death. Elena tried to summon rage. Tried to feed the anger that had burned so bright in Alexander Hunt's study. But all she could feel was a crushing sadness for everyone involved. Her mother, cut down at 28, the same age Elena was now. Her 5-year-old self, too young to understand permanence. Carlos, who'd never even met their mother. A 9-year-old Alexander, watching his father commit manslaughter and then learning to live with the silence. Her phone rang. "Carlos. Hey, Lena. You okay? You're usually home by now." Elena closed her eyes, hearing the slight breathlessness in her brother's voice.
He tired so easily now.
I'm fine. Just running late. How are you feeling? Same as always. Listen, I was thinking maybe we could splurge on Chinese food tonight. I know we're supposed to be saving, but I'm craving those dumplings from Mr. Chen's place.
Such a small wish.
Dumplings from the cheap restaurant down the street. Well, Alexander Hunt probably spent more on a single bottle of wine than they spent on groceries in a month.
Carlos, she said suddenly.
If someone offered to help with your medical expenses, someone who could actually afford it, would you accept? Silence on the other end. Then, what's going on, Elena? Just answer the question. I don't know. Depends on who it is, I guess. Why they're offering. But Lena, we don't need charity. We're managing. Are we? The words came out sharper than intended. You're on a wait list that could take years, and even if you get a kidney tomorrow, we can't afford what comes after. We're not managing. We're drowning slowly. Elena. I'm sorry. She pressed her fingers to her eyes. I'm sorry. I had a hard day. I'll be home soon. Get the dumplings. My treat. After she hung up, she sat in the gathering dusk, watching lights flicker on in apartment windows. Somewhere in one of those windows, there might be a 9-year-old child carrying a secret that would shape the rest of their life. Somewhere else, a young mother planning tomorrow's meals, not knowing she'd never see tomorrow. Elena's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I understand if you need to resign. I'll provide excellent references and 6 months severance pay. Whatever you decide, please let me know about Carlos. The offer stands. 6 months severance for 3 weeks of work. Most people would jump at it, take the money and run. But Elena had never been most people. Her mother had raised her, in those precious 5 years, to value integrity above ease. She looked at the photograph again, studying her mother's face. What would Rosa Martinez want her daughter to do? Forgive? Forget? Neither felt quite right. But maybe there was a third option. Maybe there was understanding. Elena found herself pulling up the number Alexander had texted from. Her fingers hovered over the keypad for a long moment before she started typing. I need answers. All of them. Everything you know about that night, about your father, about why you really brought me into your home. Tomorrow, 6 p.m., the coffee shop on Columbus and 72nd. If you're late, I'm gone. The response came within seconds. I'll be there at 5:45. That night, Elena sat with Carlos at their small kitchen table, the dumplings growing cold between them as she tried to find the words to explain. In the end, she told him a version of the truth, that her employer had offered to help with medical expenses, that there was history she didn't fully understand yet, that she needed time to figure out what was right. Carlos, wise beyond his 25 years, studied her face and simply nodded. Do what you think is best, sis. But remember, you don't owe anyone your peace of mind.
Not even for me.
The next evening, Elena arrived at the coffee shop at exactly 6 o'clock. Alexander Hunt was already there, seated in a corner booth with 2 untouched cups of coffee on the table. He'd shed the expensive suit for jeans and a simple sweater, and without the armor of his wealth, he looked younger, more human. She slid into the booth across from him, and for a long moment, they just looked at each other. Thank you for coming, he said finally. I didn't do it for you. Elena picked up one of the coffee cups, needing something to do with her hands. I did it for my mother. She deserves for someone to finally tell the whole truth about what happened to her. Alexander nodded. He pulled out a folder she hadn't noticed, thick with papers. This is everything I know. Police reports that were filed and then mysteriously closed. My father's financial records from that time, showing payments to a police captain. The name of the investigator who was originally assigned to the case. He's retired now, but I've spoken with him. He's willing to talk to you. Elena's hands shook as she opened the folder. There was her mother's name in official typewritten text. Rosa Martinez, 28, pronounced dead at the scene. Suspected hit and run. No witnesses. There were witnesses, Alexander said quietly. 3 people saw it happen. My father's lawyers paid them all to disappear. One of them kept the money, but kept talking anyway. That's how the case stayed open as long as it did. But eventually, my father's influence won out. Your father sounds like a monster. He was. Alexander's voice was flat. He was brilliant, charismatic, successful, and completely without conscience. He built an empire by crushing anyone who got in his way. After my mother died, he got worse. It was like her death freed him from whatever small piece of humanity he had left. Elena forced herself to look at the next page. A grainy photograph, clearly enlarged from security footage. It showed a street corner, rain-slicked pavement, a woman in a yellow dress stepping off the curb. In the next frame, car headlights. In the third, nothing but empty street. I hired investigators after my father died, Alexander continued. Not police, they wouldn't touch it. But private investigators who specialized in cold cases. They found more than I expected. Found the witness who'd kept talking. Found the security camera footage that the police had never bothered to review. Found the body shop where my father had the car fixed before he sold it. The owner kept records, including photographs of the damage. Why are you showing me this? Elena couldn't look away from the images, even though each one felt like a knife to her chest. Because you asked for the truth. And because. He hesitated, vulnerability crossing his features again. Because I've spent my entire adult life becoming the opposite of my father. Building companies that treat employees fairly, giving to charities, trying to do some good in the world. But it was all hollow. All of it was just a way to avoid facing what he did. What I helped him hide. Elena looked up at him. You were 9. I was 9 when it happened. I was 18 when I could have gone to the police myself. I was 25 when I inherited his fortune, built on blood and corruption. I was 30 when I finally hired the investigators. I've had plenty of opportunities to do the right thing, and I chose my comfort every time. The admission hung between them, honest and ugly. Elena appreciated it more than any excuse would have meant. What do you want from me? She asked. Nothing. He met her eyes. I want to give you everything I can to make this right, but I want nothing from you. Not forgiveness, not absolution, not friendship. Just the chance to help. To finally use my father's money for something good. Elena closed the folder, her decision crystallizing. Carlos needs a kidney. The transplant will cost roughly $400,000 with a surgery, hospital stay, and first year of anti-rejection drugs. After that, he'll need about $10,000 a year in medications for the rest of his life.
Done.
I'll have. I'm not finished. Her voice was steel. I don't want your money as a gift. I want it as restitution. Legal restitution for what your father took from my family. I want it documented, official, with lawyers and everything. Not charity. Justice. Alexander's eyes widened slightly. Then, slowly, he smiled. It was the first time she'd seen him smile, and it transformed his face completely. You're remarkable. Just like her. You didn't know her.
No.
But I've thought about her every day, for 25 years. And I see her in you. That strength, that refusal to be diminished. He extended his hand across the table. You'll have your restitution.
Every penny documented.
And Elena? Thank you for letting me try to make this right. She looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment before taking it. His grip was warm, steady, human. This doesn't mean I forgive you, she said. I know. And it doesn't mean we're friends. I know that too. But maybe, she took a breath. Maybe it means we can both start healing. The restitution process took 3 weeks to formalize. Alexander's lawyers worked with a legal aid attorney Elena found through a nonprofit, ensuring everything was properly documented. The settlement would officially state that the funds were compensation for the wrongful death of Rosa Martinez, with a significant portion allocated to Carlos's medical care and the remainder establishing a trust for Elena. During those 3 weeks, Elena continued working at the penthouse. It felt different now. She no longer moved through the space like a ghost. Alexander was there more often, working from home in the study she now entered without hesitation. They didn't talk much at first, but they were aware of each other in a new way. She learned things about him in the silence. He drank his coffee black and ate barely anything before noon. He took calls with his back to the room, his shoulders tense, but his voice never rose. He had a habit of standing at the windows when he was thinking, hands in his pockets, staring at the park below. One morning, she found him asleep at his desk, his head pillowed on his arms, surrounded by papers. She studied his face in repose, the hard lines softened, the perpetual guardedness absent. He looked younger when he slept, less haunted. She'd made coffee and set it beside him before leaving. When she returned an hour later, the cup was empty and there was a note. "Thank you." It became a routine. She'd find him working too late, leave coffee, return to find notes. Sometimes just "thank you." Once, "You make the best coffee in Manhattan." Another time, "I haven't slept that well in years." The notes were unsigned, but she kept them all. Carlos's transplant was scheduled for April 15th. They'd found a donor match through the registry, and with the financial barriers removed, everything moved quickly. Elena took the week off to be with her brother, and on her last day before the leave, Alexander stopped her at the door. "I know this is presumptuous," he said, "but I'd like to visit him. If he's willing. If you're willing." Elena considered. Carlos knew the whole story now. She'd told him everything one night when the weight of the secret became too much. He'd been angry at first, then thoughtful, then surprisingly compassionate. "He wants to meet you," she admitted. He said anyone who's been carrying that much guilt for that long deserves a chance at redemption. He sounds wise.
He is.
Too wise for his own good sometimes. The hospital was in Brooklyn, a 40-minute drive from Manhattan. Alexander insisted on driving them, showing up in a modest sedan rather than the town car Elena had expected. He was nervous. She could see it in the way he gripped the steering wheel, in the careful small talk he attempted on the drive. Carlos was in pre-op, looking small in the hospital bed despite being nearly 6 feet tall. His skin had the grayish tint of kidney failure, and the circles under his eyes were pronounced. But when Alexander walked in, Carlos's expression was calm, assessing. "So you're the guy," Carlos said. "I'm the guy." Alexander stood at the foot of the bed, keeping distance. "I'm glad to meet you, Carlos. I wish it were under different circumstances."
Me too.
"But we don't get to choose our circumstances, just how we respond to them." Carlos glanced at Elena, who stood by the window. "My sister tells me you've been beating yourself up for 25 years. That's accurate. That's stupid." Carlos's bluntness made Alexander blink. "You were a kid. What happened was your father's fault, not yours." "I could have spoken up later." "I could have." "Yeah, you could have done a lot of things. We all could have. But you're doing something now, and that matters." Carlos shifted in the bed, wincing slightly. "Look, I don't have a lot of energy for long conversations right now, but I want you to know something. My sister is the best person I know. She's raised me since she was 18 and I was 15, worked herself to the bone to keep us together. She's never asked for help, never complained, never stopped fighting." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "Carlos, let me finish." He looked at Alexander. "The fact that she's letting you help, the fact that she's willing to give you a chance, that's not nothing. So don't waste it. Don't treat this like some transaction to clear your conscience. If you're going to be in her life, be in it for real." Alexander's face had gone pale. "I don't know if I know how to do that." "Then learn." Carlos closed his eyes, fatigue overtaking him. "Now get out of here. Both of you. I need to sleep before they cut me open tomorrow." Elena kissed her brother's forehead, whispering promises to be there when he woke up. In the hallway, she and Alexander stood in awkward silence. "He's right, you know," Alexander said finally. "I don't know how to be in people's lives. I've spent so long keeping everyone at arm's length. I wouldn't know where to start." "Maybe start with the truth," Elena suggested. "Why did you really want to meet him?" Alexander was quiet for a long moment, staring at the linoleum floor. "Because he's all you have left of her. Your mother. And because I wanted to see what kind of person she raised. I wanted to know if there was any good that survived the tragedy." Elena's chest tightened. "And he's extraordinary. You both are." He looked at her then, and the vulnerability in his expression took her breath away. You make me think that maybe not everything my father touched turned to poison. That maybe some good survived despite him. They stood in the fluorescent-lit hospital corridor, the sounds of machines beeping and nurses' soft footsteps filling the silence. Elena thought about forgiveness, about healing, about how sometimes the people who hurt us and the people who help us can be tangled together in impossible knots. The transplant is tomorrow at 7 a.m., she said. You don't have to come, but if you want to, I'll be here at 6. He was there at 5:30, holding 2 cups of coffee and looking like he hadn't slept. They sat together in the waiting room while the surgery progressed, not talking much, but the silence felt different now. Less empty. More companionable. When the surgeon finally came out to tell them Carlos was stable and the transplant looked successful, Elena burst into tears. Alexander's hand found hers, squeezing gently, and she didn't pull away. Over the next weeks, as Carlos recovered, Alexander was a constant presence. He visited the hospital daily, bringing books Carlos mentioned wanting to read, bringing Elena meals when she forgot to eat. He was still formal, still guarded in many ways, but the walls were cracking. One evening, Elena found him sitting in Carlos's room, both of them watching a baseball game on the small TV. They were arguing about the Yankees' pitching rotation with the easy familiarity of old friends. He's growing on me, Carlos admitted later, after Alexander had left. Like a fungus, but a good fungus. Like mushrooms. Elena laughed, the sound surprising her with its lightness. That's the worst metaphor I've ever heard. Hey, I'm on a lot of medication. Cut me some slack. Carlos's smile faded slightly. Seriously though, Lena, he's not what I expected. I thought he'd be this cold, corporate robot. But he's just sad. Really, really sad. Yeah, Elena said softly. I think he has been for a very long time. Maybe you could help with that. Carlos. I'm just saying. You're good at helping people. And he clearly likes you. The way he looks at you when you're not watching? That's not just guilt, sis. Elena felt heat creep into her cheeks. You're imagining things.
Sure.
The morphine is making me hallucinate the way he lights up whenever you walk into a room. But as Elena drove home that night, she couldn't stop thinking about her brother's words. About the way Alexander had started smiling more in recent weeks. About how their morning coffee exchanges had evolved into actual conversations. About the way her heart had started beating faster when she heard his key in the lock. This wasn't part of the plan. Justice, restitution, healing, those were the goals. Not this growing warmth in her chest whenever he was near. Not the way she'd started noticing the color of his eyes, the rare sound of his laugh, the gentleness of his hands when he'd helped her with her coat. She was falling for him. Against all logic, against all reason, she was falling for the son of the man who'd killed her mother. And she had no idea what to do about it. Spring came to New York in shades of green and gold, the park outside Alexander's penthouse bursting with life. Carlos was home now, recovering well, growing stronger each day. The transplant had been a complete success, and watching her brother laugh without gasping for breath afterward felt like witnessing a miracle. Elena had officially resigned from the housekeeping position. It felt wrong to continue once the restitution was settled. But she still visited the penthouse regularly, ostensibly to help organize the foundation Alexander was creating in her mother's name, the Rosa Martinez Foundation, dedicated to helping families affected by hit-and-run accidents and corporate negligence. The truth was more complicated. She visited because she wanted to see him. Because their conversations had become the best part of her day. Because somewhere in the process of seeking justice, she'd found something she hadn't been looking for. They were sitting in his study one afternoon, reviewing grant applications, when Alexander suddenly closed his laptop and looked at her. I need to tell you something, he said. Elena's heart jumped. Okay. I'm selling the company. Of all the things she'd expected him to say, that wasn't it. What? Why? Because I built it the wrong way. Using my father's methods, his money, his connections. Every board meeting, I see his face. Every decision, I hear his voice. Alexander stood, moving to the windows as he always did when agitated. I thought I could transform his legacy into something good, but I was wrong. Some foundations are too corrupt to build on. Better to tear it down and start fresh. Alexander. Elena joined him at the window. That company employs 15,000 people. You can't just. I'm not abandoning them. I'm selling to a competitor who's agreed to retain all current employees at their current salaries. And I'm using the proceeds to fund the foundation. To actually help people instead of just making money off them. He turned to face her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. I'm tired of living in my father's shadow. I'm tired of being afraid to trust people, to let anyone close, because I'm convinced I'm poison. You and Carlos, you've shown me what real courage looks like. What real goodness looks like. And I want to be better. I want to be someone worthy of the second chance you've given me. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears. They were standing so close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from him. Elena. Her name on his lips was a question, a prayer. I know I have no right to ask this. I know that what my father did, what I let him get away with, should make any kind of relationship between us impossible. But I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop wanting to be near you. And if there's even the smallest chance that you might feel the same. I do. The words escaped before she could stop them. I feel the same, and it terrifies me. His hand came up, hovering near her face, not quite touching. It terrifies me too. I've never felt this way about anyone. I've never let myself feel this way. What if I'm like him? What if I hurt you? Elena caught his hand, pressing it to her cheek. You're nothing like him. You're kind, Alexander. You're gentle. You've spent 25 years punishing yourself for something that wasn't your fault. That's not cruelty. That's conscience. I don't deserve you. Maybe not. She smiled despite the tears gathering in her eyes. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is that we both deserve a chance at happiness. That we both deserve to stop being haunted by the past. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she might break. Elena melted into it, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss tasted like hope and fear and possibility all mixed together. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. I love you. I think I've loved you since that first day, when you looked at me like you could see through all my walls. I love you too. The admission felt like freedom, even though it makes no sense. Even though it's complicated and messy, and probably going to be hard. Definitely going to be hard, he agreed, a smile tugging at his lips. But maybe hard is okay. Maybe hard is worth it. They told Carlos that evening over dinner at the apartment. Elena was nervous. She had no idea how her brother would react to the news that she was dating the son of their mother's killer. But Carlos just laughed. About time, he said. I was starting to think I'd have to hit you both over the head. You knew? Elena stared at him. Lena, everyone knew. The nurses knew. The guy who delivers the mail probably knew. You two have been dancing around each other for months. Carlos reached across the table, taking both their hands. Mom would have wanted you to be happy. Both of you. She was the kind of person who believed in second chances, in forgiveness, in love winning out over pain. That's what you told me about her, right? Elena nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Then honor her by living that way. Don't let what happened to her make you afraid to love. Don't let it make you bitter. Carlos squeezed their hands. Be happy. That's the best revenge against the darkness, to choose light anyway. The weeks that followed were a revelation. Elena discovered what it was like to be with someone who saw all of her, the grief, the strength, the occasional bitterness, and loved her anyway. Alexander opened up in ways he'd never allowed himself before, sharing stories from his childhood, the good memories before his mother died and his father became a monster. They visited Rosa's grave together, the small headstone in Queens that Elena visited every year on her birthday. Alexander laid flowers, yellow roses, the color of the dress Rosa had worn the night she died. I'm sorry, he whispered to the stone. I'm so sorry for what he took from you. But I promise to take care of your children. I promise to honor your memory by being better than him, by choosing love. Elena leaned against him, her own flowers, white carnations, her mother's favorite, laid beside his roses. She thought about forgiveness, about how it wasn't a single moment, but a choice made over and over again. About how loving Alexander didn't mean forgetting what his father had done, but rather refusing to let that tragedy define their future. She would have liked you, Elena said softly. The you that you are now, the you that you're becoming. I hope so. He pulled her closer. I hope I can become someone worthy of that. The foundation launched in June, a beautiful ceremony attended by victims' advocates, city officials, and dozens of families who would benefit from the programs. Elena gave a speech about her mother, about resilience, about turning pain into purpose. When she finished, the applause was thunderous, but all she saw was Alexander's face in the crowd, his eyes shining with pride and love. Later, at the reception, an older woman approached them. She was in her 70s, elegant in a simple blue dress, and she was crying. Thank you, she said to Alexander. My daughter was killed by a drunk driver 20 years ago. The driver's family had money, had lawyers. They made it go away and we got nothing, no justice, no closure, nothing. This foundation, what you're doing, it matters. It means the world to families like mine. Alexander's voice was thick when he responded. I'm sorry for your loss. And I'm sorry it took me so long to find the courage to do this. After the woman left, Elena found Alexander on the balcony, staring out at the city lights. You okay? She asked. Better than okay. He pulled her into his arms, resting his chin on top of her head. I feel like I can finally breathe, like I've been holding my breath for 25 years, and I can finally let it out. That's called healing, Elena said. That's what it feels like. Is this what you feel too? Every day with you. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. Every single day. 1 year later, Elena stood in the living room of a house in Brooklyn, her house, the deed bearing her name. It wasn't huge or fancy, but it had 3 bedrooms, one for her, one for Carlos, one for guests, a small garden out back, and a kitchen with enough counter space to cook real meals. It was home in a way their cramped apartment had never been. Carlos was in the garden, planting tomatoes with an enthusiasm that still amazed her. He'd gone back to school, studying social work, determined to help other families navigate the medical system that had once seemed so insurmountable. His color was good, his energy boundless. He was thriving. Alexander appeared in the doorway, carrying boxes marked kitchen. They'd been moving things in all day, a process made both easier and harder by the fact that she kept stopping to kiss him. Last load, he announced, setting the boxes down. Though I maintain you have way too many coffee mugs for one person. I like variety. Elena wrapped her arms around his waist. And, technically, I'm not one person anymore. You're here almost every night. Almost every night, he agreed. Would you like to make it official? Elena's heart stuttered. What? Alexander pulled back slightly, reaching into his pocket. When his hand emerged, it held a small velvet box. I know it's fast. I know we've only been together a year. But I've spent my entire life being cautious, being careful, keeping people at a distance. And then you walked into my life and turned everything upside down. You taught me how to feel, how to trust, how to believe that I deserve happiness. He opened the box, revealing a simple gold band with a single diamond, elegant, understated, perfect. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to waste another day not being your husband. Elena Martinez, will you marry me? She was crying, nodding, pulling him down for a kiss before she could even say the words.
Yes.
Yes, of course, yes. The ring slid onto her finger, like it had always belonged there. Through the window, she could see Carlos doing a victory dance in the garden, and she realized he must have known, must have been in on the plan. How long has my brother known? She asked. 2 weeks. He helped me pick the ring. Alexander grinned. He said your mother would have wanted something simple, but meaningful. Was he right? Elena looked at the ring, tears streaming down her face. He was right. It's perfect. You're perfect. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to be better every day. For you. For us. They were married in September, a small ceremony in the park near where they'd first really talked. Carlos walked Elena down the aisle, beaming with pride. The foundation's board members came, along with a few close friends. It was intimate, meaningful, full of love. During the vows, Alexander's voice cracked with emotion. I promise to honor your mother's memory by being the kind of man she would have wanted for her daughter. I promise to spend every day trying to be worthy of your love. I promise to choose light over darkness, hope over fear, and you above everything else. Elena's vows were simpler. I promise to love you not despite our past, but because of how we've transformed it. I promise to remind you every day that you are good, that you are worthy, that you are loved. I promise to build a future with you that honors where we've been while refusing to be defined by it. When the officiant pronounced them married, the small gathering erupted in applause. Carlos whistled loudly, making everyone laugh. And as Alexander kissed his bride, Elena felt her mother's presence, like sunshine on her shoulders, warm, approving, peaceful. The reception was held at the foundation's headquarters, a converted brownstone in Brooklyn. On the walls hung photographs of Rosa Martinez, along with other victims whose families the foundation had helped. It wasn't morbid. It was a celebration of lives that had mattered, of love that endured, of justice finally served. Late in the evening, Elena found Alexander standing in front of her mother's photograph, the same image he'd carried in his wallet for 25 years. Thank you, he said softly to the picture. Thank you for raising such an incredible daughter. Thank you for teaching her about strength and grace and forgiveness. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve her. Elena slipped her hand into his. She knows. Wherever she is, she knows. Over the following years, their family grew. Not with children right away, that would come later, but with purpose and connection. The foundation expanded to other cities, helping hundreds of families each year. Carlos graduated with his MSW and came to work for the foundation, his personal experience making him invaluable to the families they served. Alexander sold his father's company as he'd planned, using the proceeds to endow the foundation permanently. He started a new venture, a tech company focused on safety features for vehicles, blind spot detection, automatic braking, alcohol sensors. If I can prevent even one accident, he told Elena, it's worth it. They visited Rosa's grave regularly, always together, always with flowers. The headstone had been upgraded with some of the restitution money, nothing ostentatious, but dignified. It read, Rosa Martinez, beloved mother, 1974 to 2002. Her love lives on in those she left behind. On the 5th anniversary of their first meeting, Elena and Alexander sat in the penthouse. Alexander had kept it, though they lived primarily in Brooklyn. It was a rainy evening, much like the night Rosa Martinez had died all those years ago. But this time, the rain felt cleansing rather than tragic. Do you ever regret it? Alexander asked, pulling Elena close on the couch. Giving me a chance? Letting me into your life? Elena thought about the question seriously. Their path hadn't been easy. There were still moments when grief ambushed her, when she looked at Alexander and saw a 9-year-old boy in a car that killed her mother. There were still nights when he woke up from nightmares, convinced he was becoming his father. But there were far more moments of joy, of laughter over dinner with Carlos, of working together at the foundation, knowing they were making a real difference, of quiet mornings drinking coffee and reading the paper, of the simple, profound happiness of being loved and loving in return. Never, she said firmly. Not for a single second. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Even though nothing. She turned to face him fully. We don't get to choose how we meet. We don't get to choose our pasts or the burdens we carry. But we do get to choose what we build from the ruins. And we built something beautiful, Alexander. Out of tragedy and pain and guilt, we built love and purpose and hope. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. I love you, Elena Hunt. I love you too. That night, as they lay in bed, Elena thought about her mother's smile in that photograph. About how even in her final moment, crossing a rain-slicked street, Rosa Martinez had been smiling. She'd been a woman who found joy even in ordinary moments, who'd raised her daughter to be strong and forgiving and brave. Elena liked to think that her mother's last thought hadn't been of fear or pain, but of love, of the 5-year-old girl waiting for her at home, of the beautiful life she'd built despite its challenges, of all the tomorrows she'd hoped to see. And while Rosa hadn't gotten those tomorrows, Elena was living them for both of them now, building a life full of love and purpose and second chances, proving that even the darkest nights could lead to bright mornings. That forgiveness was stronger than hate. That love could bloom even in the most unlikely soil. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean, nurturing the gardens, promising growth. And inside, wrapped in her husband's arms, Elena Martinez Hunt felt a peace she'd never imagined possible. Her mother would have been proud. 10 years after that rainy night when Elena found her mother's photograph, she stood in the Foundation's new conference room, addressing a group of young advocates. Her hand rested on her rounded belly, 6 months pregnant with her and Alexander's first child, a daughter they'd already decided to name Rosa. Justice, she told the group, isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about restoration, about taking what was broken and finding a way to make it whole again, not the same as before, but whole nonetheless. After the presentation, Alexander met her at the door, his hand immediately going to her stomach, feeling for their daughter's kick. She's active today, Elena said, smiling. She takes after her mother. Alexander kissed Elena's temple. Strong, determined, absolutely refuses to be quiet about injustice. Carlos joined them, now the Foundation's director of family services, engaged to a wonderful man he'd met at a support group. We're heading to Mom's grave this weekend, he said. Sarah wants to meet her, even if it's just the headstone. We'll come with you, Elena said immediately. And they did, the growing family gathering around Rosa Martinez's final resting place, telling stories and sharing laughter and making promises to keep her memory alive. Little Rosa kicked inside Elena's womb, as if eager to join the legacy of strength and love and redemption. Looking around at her family, her husband, her brother, her future sister-in-law, and the daughter growing inside her, Elena felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Not for the tragedy that had brought them together, but for the courage it had taken to transform that tragedy into something beautiful. Her mother's photo was no longer in Alexander's wallet. Instead, it sat in a frame in their home, surrounded by newer photos, wedding pictures, Carlos's graduation, Foundation events, ultrasound images of baby Rosa. The past preserved, but not imprisoning. Remembered, but not limiting. Because that, Elena had learned, was the secret to moving forward. You honor where you've been while refusing to live there. You carry your grief like a precious stone, but you don't let it weigh you down. You forgive not because the wrong was small, but because your heart is large enough to hold both pain and love, justice and mercy, memory and hope. As they walked away from the cemetery that day, Alexander's hand in hers and their daughter dancing inside her, Elena looked up at the clear blue sky and smiled. The same smile her mother had worn on a rain-soaked street all those years ago. The smile of someone who, despite everything, still believed in love.